Log flumes. One of my favorite rides at any amusement park. There's something so enjoyable about just gliding through the trough. It's almost like a lazy river has been supersized. Mix in a small drop and then add a big drop at the end, and that's all it really takes to make me happy. It's a rather simple ride design, but they always provide nice long rides, and they typically build up some pretty long lines during the summer days. Now, this love of log flumes is not universal, but the general public seems to enjoy them. Yet, despite their popularity, they seem to continue to disappear. Log Jumper, for one example, is gone, and there's countless others from the Six Flags chains, and now Stanley Falls from Busch Gardens is gone too. Log flumes seem to be a dying breed of ride, with their numbers quickly diminishing. But why is that? How much time do they have left, and what might be on the horizon to replace them? To find out how much time we might have left with them, first we need to go back to where they started. Log flumes start out being exactly as they sound. They were out west and were used to quickly carry newly felled trees down a hill. Now, this is not all too important to the story, so let's jump back forward a little bit. The first modern rendition of a log flume was formed as a more thrilling version of the classic Old Mill ride. It was designed by Arrow just as many new innovations during this time period were. El Aserradero, the sawmill, opened at Six Flags Over Texas on June 25th, 1963, followed by Mill Race at Cedar Point a few weeks later. Mill Race has since been replaced at Cedar Point, while El Aserradero is still operating to this day. This addition was initially planned to only be a temporary attraction at the park. However, due to its massive success during the opening year, the ride was later moved to a permanent location in the park and even had a second flume built to double its ride's capacity. Throughout the next 13 years, aero development dominated the log industry, installing 39 log flumes across the globe. Six Flags was a massive contributor to the sale of log flumes, buying 11 during this time period. So, with this, the log flume boom began. These designs traditionally feature a meandering section, which leads into a set of two drops, with the second being larger than the first. These layouts provide fun and long experiences, with a little splash of thrill mixed in for all to enjoy. The designs cater to a very scenic attraction, whether you just build them in a fittingly woodsy environment or build up an entire scene around the ride. Knott's Berry Farm was very quick to the idea of theming the attraction, building a massively successful flume, which is still operating to this day and is themed to a lumber camp while being placed within a mountain facade. This is far from the first flume to be elaborately themed, of course, as Disney, Fantasialand, Universal, and others have since built them as well. It was not until 1976 that another manufacturer made their own take on the log flume. Reverchon Industries opened their first during this year, with Mach Rides right behind them, opening their first in 1977. Mach is one of the larger manufacturers of log flumes through the years, and will become more important later in our story. Intamin and Hopkin Rides are another couple of manufacturers who have played a larger role in the production of log flumes. All in all, there have been a total of 27 different manufacturers to have produced at least a single log flume over the years, although most of these companies have not made more than a few. With this, a total of 457 log flumes are on record of having operated at some point. However, this number may be disputed. It is easy to say, though, that at least 400 unique log flumes have been manufactured. Of this, Arrow built the most with 64, while Reverchon and Hopkins are close behind with 55 and 50 flumes, respectively. Meanwhile, the United States has by far the most with 119 in the country. The United Kingdom follows with 56 installations, which is rather impressive given the size difference compared to the United States. Rounding out the top three is Germany with 45 total installations. Now, all these numbers are recorded over time and do not represent the total number of active flumes within these regions, because sadly it seems like log flumes constantly get removed from parks. But is this really the case? Of the 450 some log flumes in the world, 123 of them are listed as removed. This number was somewhat lower than I was expecting, as it comes out to only about 27% of them being removed. It sure feels like there has been more removals than that. So for this next part, I'm going to focus more on the United States because that's what I'm exposed to at least. This is where I found more of what I was expecting going into this video. In the United States, 53 of the 119 log flumes have been demolished. This comes out to almost 50% of the log flumes in the country being demolished now. And the oldest one is 63 years old, which isn't actually that old, and it's one of the remaining 66. Is this just parks not wanting to fork over the cash to extend the service life of these attractions? It is definitely interesting that the percentage of demolished log flumes in the US is substantially greater than the global average. One focal point of this is that the trough design of the log flumes. Log flumes, which are designed with fiberglass troughs, are inevitably going to be on a timer before the pieces need to be refurbished, which we have seen with many parks. Great Adventure recently put in a bunch of money refurbishing their log flume, and several years ago, Knoebels did the same thing. A ride which is constantly operating with water and a high throughput of ride vehicles is going to be subjected to quite a bit of wear and tear than some other rides compared to in the park. On the topic of service life, Arrow was the original manufacturer, so let's examine how their catalog is faring, as they went out of business over a quarter of a century ago now. In the United States, 31 out of 52 log flumes built by Arrow have since been removed. It's definitely fair to say that the ride's aging is a factor of their slow demise across the country. However, I find it very interesting to look at which parks have decided that the upkeep of the ride is not worth it. It's predominantly mid to lower tier parks, with some exceptions, of course. Higher end parks seem to be willing to front the cost to keep these rides going for a really long time. For example, Disney just spent millions converting Briar Patch into Tiana's, making it very clear that the ride is in the long term plan for that park. Similarly, Knott's, Great America, Great Adventure, Kings Island, and Dollywood all seem to show no intent on removing their log flumes. There is another group of parks as well which seem to fully intend on retaining their log flumes for the foreseeable future, and that's those independent gems of the United States. I made a video discussing them previously, and part 2 will be out in a few weeks. Parks like Seabreeze, Santa's Village, and Waldemere, and some others, there's a lot of these small scale parks with their own special charm which brings in guests rather than big thrill attractions, and these seem to retain a decent chunk of the operating log flumes in the United States. A log flume fits perfectly into the portfolio which these parks are trying to offer. A cozy, family oriented feel where every ride in the park is either for children or for the family to enjoy. It's much easier to maintain the successful ride which is already installed than it is to tear down a favorite in the park and attempt to replace it with something different. Most log flumes are not heavily themed, just putting them in a slightly woodsy environment is the perfect vibe to go along with these attractions. The parks which remove the log flumes do not continue to capture the same success with the ride which puts it in its place most of the time. Even if it is a success, as Kennywood had with installing Steel Curtain on the grave of Logjammer, the public still misses the ride. Typically, the parks which have removed their log flume retain their boat rides, which take up much less space and are presumably cheaper to operate. In the park's eyes, that attraction provides the exact same purpose, just to cool guests on a hot day. What who cares about the experience when you are saving money, am I right? One thing is definitely for sure. Log flumes are often one of the most popular rides within their parks, yet the installation of them has declined substantially since the turn of the century, and only a handful of them have been built in the last 7 years. Truth about the model is that it's been around for 60 years, and a majority of the ones that are being built now are at parks which are just opening. So, do all the parks that want one already have one? There may be a decent amount of merit to this claim. It's kind of hard to think about a park that you would like to have a log flume that hasn't already had one in the past. Parks seem to believe that they only need one water ride within a dry park, and oftentimes it's their boat ride which fits the bill, and most parks label those as a flume still, which I guess it's somewhat fair, but I'm just not very happy about it because I want my log flumes. Costs associated with operating a somewhat aging and often large attraction seems to just not be worth it. Unfortunately, I can somewhat get behind the park's decisions to remove them. A log flume is never the marquee attraction at a park. It's always a supporting ride. No matter how long the lines will always be, it is not the reason people came to the park that day. Okay, maybe some people go to the park for a log ride, but we're talking like a tenth of a percent. The parks which remove the rides probably see little to no difference in attendance the next year without the ride. The overall guest enjoyment may dip slightly, but it's not a deal breaker at the end of the day. Costs pile up around it, and it just gets harder to justify. The plots of land which log rides take up are often very big and extremely valuable to a developed park. Replacing an aging attraction with something shiny and new, which will increase attendance the next year, just makes sense. The amusement world is a business as much as it's fun to pretend that it isn't. So, where did things go from here? Here's where I believe that mock rides comes back into our story. They've been a leader in developing newer, more thrilling versions of water rides. This might be where the evolution of log flumes is headed. While they're off offerings are substantially pricier than what a log flume was. It's also then a larger guest draw. I also think it's fair to assume that these rides may require less maintenance over time than an old aero flume, as technology has progressed a lot since the first log flume in 1963. Night Flight Expedition may be our first look at where family thrill water rides may end up. Now, this could be completely wrong, and Mach's newer models could never catch on at all. But to me, it just makes sense that something will remain in this niche of rides. I do not believe the log flumes are on borrowed time, but I definitely think it is significant to note the decline in production. What ones are currently here may be about all that we get. It will definitely be interesting to watch in the coming years to see if any more begin to be built or if maybe there's an increase in the ride removal rates. Log flumes are one of my favorite rides in a lot of parks. For me, they're an absolute must ride whenever I travel to a new park. It's sad to see them dying off in the States as I find them to be somewhat of an unsung hero to parks. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I don't believe that they truly get enough love. Even if I understand the reasons why they are being removed, it doesn't make it any easier to see them go. Busch Gardens is on a list for removing Stanley Falls. I only rode it once, but it was a good time. Log Jammer was an equally big loss for me, even though I do really enjoy its replacement. I'm sure you can probably think of many others which have been removed that you wish were still operating. Those are just two that I'd been on and I really liked their layouts as they had a little bit of extra spice and character. But for now, this is where our story ends. Log flumes are far from a dying breed, but it does appear that they are a bit beyond their prime. Hopefully, we will see them rise again with the innovation of Mach, but only time will tell. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Take care.